So, are you willing to risk sharing your faith story with someone else who may be desperate to hear it? So, no matter, even if they respond negatively. So, in chapter 22 of Acts, we see Paul's addressing the crowd. And we have to remember that just in the very end of chapter 21, this same crowd is trying to kill Paul. They drag him from the temple. They're beating him and shouting, "Kill him, kill him." The Roman soldiers have to save Paul, and they're trying to separate him. But Paul convinces the Roman soldiers to allow him to address this violent crowd. So that's where we're at in chapter 22. Paul then begins to speak to this crowd in Aramaic. And this calms them down because it's their everyday language. And then Paul begins to identify with this crowd and saying, I understand why you're doing what you're doing, because I too imprisoned people. I arrested people. I persecuted the followers of Jesus, even to the point of death. But let me tell you how my life was transformed. And he begins to tell them what happened to him on the road to Damascus when he encountered Jesus, and a bright light shined on him, and he fell to the ground and he became blind, and he was and Jesus spoke to him, and then Jesus sent him into Damascus to meet up with Ananias, who would pray for him to heal him from the blindness, and to also help him understand the calling that God had on his life. And Paul was told that he was called to share the good news of God's grace with all people, whether Jew or Gentile, with kings and with religious elite. He was called to share God's grace with all people. And that's what Paul's doing here with this crowd. Now, this crowd turns on him again, because when he says that the Gentiles are also included, Paul being a Jew, this crowd of Jewish people became very angry. They couldn't comprehend that Gentiles would also be included in the grace of God, and that the Gentiles would also be loved by God. And so they turned violent towards Paul again. And so, but Paul's heart here is, he says it in chapter 20, he says, however, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's wonderful grace. And so, aren't we so glad that Paul was faithful to do that? And so many others along the way have been faithful to share that good news, so that today we have the opportunity to receive that good news. Well, we're all called to share the good news of God's grace, his forgiveness, and his love to the people in our lives and to the world around us. So are you willing to risk to share your faith story with those around you? And if you're exploring faith today, maybe your risk is to take a step of faith to receive this good news of God's grace, his forgiveness, and his love.